You are listening to the Taps and Teas Show, weekly conversations for people passionate about marketing, golf, and craft beer. Marty is the co-founder of Bad Rhino, an award-winning digital marketing agency helping golf and craft beer brands get real results in social media marketing. Here is your host, Marty McDonald.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Taps and Teas. This is Marty McDonald, and I want to bring to you a guest today in the brewery world that I think is one of the most important. And I got to know this guy through a couple of meetings here in PA and a lot of drinking. We will just say it. There was a lot of drinking going on and some good times. But one thing I really like about him, and he actually got our insurance at Bad Rhino, my company, because he's super knowledgeable about a lot of little things. And I think one of the things when you talk about insurance is you kind of your eyes glaze over. Okay, what type of insurance do I need? What do I need to do with this? What do I need to do with that? And you just kind of go, okay, do whatever. And Mike actually walked me through a couple of things I just didn't realize that we didn't have in our own insurance. And he's like, hey man, I'll take a look. And it was great because he took a look, got everything in line. And when I was like, dude, this is great. Plus he saved me money, which is always a bonus when you're dealing with insurance. And I got better coverage. So he looked at some of the finer things. And I think in the brewery world, this is a key thing in any business, honestly. But I think in the brewery world is very key with everything else that's going on in the world. You want to make sure your insurance is airtight. So today we're going to chat a little bit with Mike Wagner from Marsh Insurance. Mike, are you there?
I am here. And after that intro, wow, do I even need to say anything?
Well, I think you should tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So Marty, first off, thanks for having us on. I really, have a great relationship with Marty. Got to meet him again at some functions through the Brewers of PA. And yes, there have been a lot of beers drank and a lot of good times. But so I head up the brewery insurance division of Marsh Insurance. I'm the vice president here. And about 2 years ago, the agency decided to jump 2 feet in the pool with the brewing industry. And we joined the Brewers of PA and really have focused on building out the niche for brewery insurance. Some exciting news coming up. We're actually launching brewerinsured.com, which is going to be a separate website, basically a division of Marsh, which is going to be very focused only to brewing, with having blogs and vlogs and things like that relating to brewery and brewery insurance. So that's kind of a little 30-second commercial. And I'll throw it back to you, Marty.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, and I think putting it in there, we won't mention any specific incidents around some fun times. There was a glass broken one time, but we won't talk about anything of that.
Oh, wow.
I know. We won't talk about any of that, but it was a good time. Mike is a really personable guy, which I love. But Mike, just before we move into some other questions, because people listen to this all over the country, amazingly, not just in PA. What areas do you guys support just around the country?
Yeah. So you're looking more for like our footprint?
Yep.
Yeah. So our footprint currently is, especially on the brewery side, is we're rolling out, and we can talk a little bit more on what we've got going on, but we're rolling out a program in Pennsylvania, which hopefully will be scalable to New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, DC. So right now, I would say the Mid-Atlantic states, with obviously, hopefully scalability to some point where, we could take it nationwide.
Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to clear on that just so that we have everybody on the same page while they listen to this. And I think if you're in another state that Mike's not covering right now, a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about, just really high level, or stuff that you want to take a look at. So, you can talk to your own insurance if you're out in California or in Arizona, Florida, et cetera. The one thing I'm always impressed upon when I talk to Mike, when he tells me the stories about a brewery that started, say, 3 years ago and what they did. So, Mike, what are the common mistakes that breweries make when they're starting out with insurance?
Yeah. So, the biggest thing we find, Marty, is that, a lot of insurance agents don't really understand how to insure a brewery. They think it's a restaurant, but it's not quite a restaurant. They think it's a bar, but it's not quite a bar. So, what we've tried to do is it's kind of like, I'll equate it to medicine real quick. If you have chest pain, Marty, you go to your family doctor and be like, hey, I have chest pain. What can I do? Or you could go to a cardiologist that specializes in it and, get a better diagnosis, hopefully from the cardiologist than you would from your family doctor. Well, we look at brewery insurance that way. You could go to your cousin or your uncle, and they could probably try to help you out. It may or may not be correct, or you can come to us, and we're more of the cardiologists when it comes to brewery insurance. So there are a lot of mistakes that are made. You know, and it's funny, Marty. A lot of the common mistakes are mistakes that are made on insurance across all industries and all classes of business. So we try to address that by going in and taking a look at what you have now and giving you that professional second opinion. What you would hate is I won't mention exact names. We worked on a brewery up in Erie where had he had a fire at his building, he pretty much would have had to hang a close sign, and he would have never been able to open back up again.
So like other than hiring your little brother to do your insurance, right? When they open up, like you said, some people say, oh, they think it's the same as a restaurant. They think it's the same as a bar, but it's not. What are some of the little nuances if you were talking to, say, somebody that wanted to open up a brewery? What were the things that you would just say, hey, these have to be on your checklist and make sure you're covered here, here, and here?
Yeah. So it's actually kind of funny. On Tuesday, I was actually visiting a startup in Horsham. And we had actually talked about this. He was questioning, hey, what do I need? And, when I sat down with him, he was actually already behind the eight ball because he had all this equipment in the building and currently no coverage for any of the equipment that he was installing. They had made changes to the building with drains and things like that. And essentially, if he'd have a fire right now, he'd be out a pretty good capital investment. So that's number one, is that you got to kind of get insurance while you're a brewery and planning before you actually start brewing any beer. And once you start brewing beer, the main issues is obviously there's a property issue for all your equipment and your supplies and things like that. There's a liability exposure, Marty, where you have somebody slip and fall inside the property. We all have those exposures. But then in Pennsylvania, you also have a liquor exposure. Obviously, when you're serving alcohol, you can get pulled into suits. Pennsylvania doesn't have the exact friendliest liquor liability laws. So that's an important feature. But if we dive into it, what I've just described to you is essentially a restaurant or a bar. Where breweries tend to miss things are coverages specific to brewing, contamination to your product, selling price of your product. If a tank collapses or leaks, what happens to that spilled good? And those are the things that we try to point out that, okay, hey, yeah, you've got certain coverage, but you don't have the ones that are, truly industry, specific to brewing.
Where do you think when breweries do set that up, right, whatever stage they're in, and not trying to disparage anybody in the industry or anything, people selling insurance, but why do they think they miss that when they, breweries are a little bit different than the bars and the restaurants? Why do they just skip over that? Is it because of it's expensive or?
So I really think, Marty, the unfortunate thing is, and it's fortunate for me because it gives me great job security, is the unfortunate thing. There's a lot of agents out there that really, don't know how to handle writing a brewery, nor understand the coverages that entail, that you really need to kind of, create that, protective barrier around the brewery. Is they don't understand the coverages. They don't know what to ask for. They really don't even know which coverages are important. And unfortunately, you do have a lot of buyers that the biggest thing that they want to buy on is price. And I can give you a great price and crap coverage, or I could give you a competitive price and give you coverage that gives you that peace of mind, like the brewery in Erie now that is now a customer understands. Yeah, it might be $100, $200, $300 more a year. But at the end of the day, if my business burns, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be able to open back up.
Right.
And yeah, but I think a lot of it does come down to the agents not knowing. And then, conversely, on the brewery side, a lot of the guys do buy on price.
Yeah. Do you think in terms of the price that they just don't know? So they say, okay, this is, $10,000 policy a year or whatever the cost is, just throwing a number out there. Hey, this looks kind of similar for 5,000, like they just don't know, or is it something a little bit weirder than that?
No, I think that's exactly right.
Gotcha.
Let's be real. I think in what you do, Marty, you're an expert in what you do. You're not trying to be an expert insurance agent. So if you see
right.
two policies and they both have liability, and one is half the price of the other, most people would just be like, hey, it's $5,000 cheaper. Let's just go without asking the question, why is it $5,000 cheaper? I think that's more or less. Look, I made that mistake when I was, in my personal life. Is we remodeled my basement and I took the lowest bid, and it looks like I took the lowest bid when I finished my basement. So, cheaper is not always better, especially when it could potentially sacrifice everything you've worked for.
Yeah, and I think from personal, and like I said at the beginning of this podcast, full disclosure, Mike does our insurance at Bad Rhino, which is my agency. And, I think the unique part was I'm like, dude, I don't think I need this much or whatever. And he wound up getting me better insurance at a better price across the board. And it was just little nuances. Like I didn't know how to ask those questions. And I think whether you're whatever business you own, but especially in the brewery, just ask your agent, like, what do I need? And, make sure I'm covered, and even think about the catastrophic stuff, even though you don't like to talk about it. It's like, buying life insurance and then you're like, oh, I need it. But you don't want to really get into the nitty gritty of it. And then you might forget, something like disability insurance, which is just as important if, God forbid, something happens.
Hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing on the show and want more, head on over to tapsandteas.info and get our free report with game-changing tips and strategies straight to your inbox. Just enter your info and stop being stuck with no marketing plan.
So even though if you're uncomfortable with it, make sure you look at that and, if you're in the areas where Blue Marsh, works, reach out to them, because I think it's very important. And every time I talk to a brewer, which is quite often, especially, over the last few months with the winding down, hopefully, of COVID and all that. But they're always talking about revamping everything else that they have because they saw different things. And insurance should be one of those things on your list. Mike can probably tell you horror stories. I just know of a few. And I think that's why I've had people that are in the insurance business on this podcast, because it's something that comes up all the time, especially if you're a brewer and planning. Make sure you get that done. So, Mike, just over the past year with COVID and everything, how's that changed your business just working with breweries?
Yeah, so obviously COVID has been a challenge, especially in the beginning, basically having to do everything via phone call, via Zoom. That obviously was a challenge. I probably have been back to work, Marty, since July of last year. And, it really goes down to the individual brewery on how comfortable they are. I've visited some, we've masked up or what have you, and things have been able to get done. I see it starting to open back up. We discussed before the podcast, I think we're probably going to have one of our best years. And a lot of it is, people are starting to feel a little more comfortable with, one-to-one interaction that I think we lacked last year. So, yeah, that obviously was a huge hurdle. And on the insurance end, let's be real, talking to some brewers, their worry was, hey, crap, I need to get my PPP loans. I'm not really looking at switching my insurance right now because it's on the bottom of my list because of all this other stuff that I've got to get accomplished to stay in business.
Absolutely. Did anybody reach out just because they're like, pandemic, do I need to have something different in my insurance moving forward?
Yeah, so for sure, man. Not just breweries, but pretty much customers all across the spectrum. One of the biggest questions we got was, hey, is there insurance coverage because the government shut us down because of this pandemic? And the sad answer, Marty, was that almost all insurance policies have this nasty thing which says, we're not going to pay any claims in reference to viruses, bacteria, and things like that. So I expect that to change going forward. I expect you to be able to buy some type of, we'll call it plague insurance. That being said, I don't think it's going to be cheap. I think it is something that's going to come with a price.
Sure.
But we got a lot of those phone calls, especially in the beginning of COVID when the shutdowns were really fresh, and there wasn't a whole lot of companies doing like starting the outdoor seating yet and things like that. And talking to some of the brewers, obviously they were able to kind of stem the tide by going to outdoor seating, by if you had a canning line by switching to distribution instead of taproom sales. So it's been neat to see, how these breweries have overcome the challenges.
Yep. No, 100%. How did you get into, working with breweries?
Other than the fact that I love to drink beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the craft brewery industry has just been, booming. As you've been in it longer than me, Marty, with craft beer. I mean, the craft brewing industry has just been booming. And the funny thing is when we looked at it, we didn't see a whole lot of, programs out there, a whole lot of expertise. So it seemed to be a pretty smart fit, and don't get me wrong, I'm never going to really, turn up an opportunity to have a pint or two. So that's kind of what got us in. I mean, if I can give a 10-second commercial, I would say, just keep an eye out for some pretty exciting stuff happening with Blue Marsh and the Brewers of Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. You can put a commercial in here. That's fine. Tell me a little bit about your favorite beer. I usually talk about styles of beer because then this way we don't have to mention any breweries. But if you want to mention a few breweries, it's cool. I try and stay away from that because I actually, like I said, people actually listen to this. It blows my mind. But then I got an email from somebody and it was like, hey, you mentioned this beer. And I won't say what it is, but if you go back a few episodes, you can definitely see when I talk about it. And then they just emailed me and it was all lighthearted fun. They're like, why didn't you mention my beer? So anyway.
Well, yeah, I'm going to stay out of that. I'm going to stay out of that Shark Tank. Definitely talk about favorite style of beer. I've been drinking beer for for a long time. We'll just put it that way. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on underage drinking, but no, I've been drinking for a long time. But favorite style of beer right now. I mean, it's kind of funny. I think your palate and your likes change over time. I mean, I would definitely say, love the IPAs, but also, I mean, I was at a brewery on Tuesday and had a really great ESB. Right. So I'm pretty much, I'm one of those people. The only thing I really don't like, Marty, and please don't kill me, brewers that hear this and absolutely love this style. I'm just not a big wheat guy. Other than wheat, though, there's not a ton that I don't like. IPAs. I've grown to love some sours, which if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I'd have been like, these sours are terrible. Right. But it's neat how like I said, I think your palate matures and a certain style of beer that you thought was not that great before is now one of your favorites. So yeah, but everything, lagers, pilsners, man, whiskey. Oh wait, there's a brewery podcast. My bad.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think. My thing is with that, when I talk about styles of beer, I love IPAs. I slowly can't drink as many anymore, but I think it's the clean IPAs I can drink a ton of, West Coast. I can drink that. Anything that starts to get hazy anymore, it just doesn't work for me, right? And it's kind of funny. It's I love all the pilsners that are coming out now and the lagers. That to me has been exciting because it's just different spin on some really good styles of beer, in my opinion, that you can sit around and drink more than 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny, you don't blame the brewers though, because they're brewing what it sells. Yeah. I mean, so you got that whole generation that just is in love with the whole milkshake IPAs and the, hazy, juicy, IPAs. But yeah, I'm like you, man. I mean, I like the cleaner IPAs. Look, I'll mention a non-PA beer. I go back to just drinking like a Sierra Nevada. I love that style of the West Coast IPA.
Right.
And craft beer drinkers, I'm just bringing it up because I'm not going to mention a craft brewery in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, no, I think those things are interesting to see, the evolution. I've been in this for 7 years as supporting and working with breweries. So it's very fascinating to watch the evolution from 2014 through 2021. As far as that, Mike, what's the best beer trip you went on outside of PA? Because I know you do a lot of business there. What's the one brewery that you hit outside of Pennsylvania that you were like, holy crap, this is really good?
Yeah. So my son is in the United States Army stationed out in Colorado Springs. And my wife and I, for our anniversary, went out to visit him and spend some time with him. And based on a recommendation from one of our current craft brew customers, we hit a place in Colorado Springs called Trinity Brewing Company. They won a bunch of GABF stuff, and they had some fantastic beers. I mean, they had I think it was a triple. It was probably like 16%, but it was so crushable. I'm thinking I could easily pass out and I wouldn't even know it because it was so crushable for me at that high ABV. But yeah, shout out to Trinity Brewing in Colorado Springs. That's probably, you got the Rockies there. It's beautiful scenery, and the beer was crushable.
Yep. That's awesome. In terms of that, what's the all-time favorite, you just had one and you were like, oh my gosh, I could drink this all the time, or it just was different than what you thought it would be? It's that one beer.
One, you want me to go name here?
Oh yeah.
So, okay. I for the rest of my PA brewery customers, please don't
I can put you on the spot now.
Yeah, please don't crucify me on this. But if Jason Lavery is listening in, I could literally sit and drink like a case of Dulacan every day, all day long.
That's good beer.
Super crushable. So a shout out to Jason and his team, because they do a great job, and that's one of my all-time favorite. After I had one, I'm like, let me drink a case of these.
I actually have the T-shirt from there when I went out there and visited him. From that too, I was just like, I need this because I want people to ask about it. And you don't get, any of that beer on this side of the state where we are on the east side.
Yeah, it's been interesting how many people have started to ship them. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We can start to get some stuff from the western part of PA. Guys, we are located in the eastern part of Pennsylvania or central Pennsylvania. So to get stuff from Pittsburgh used to be a challenge. It's neat to see a lot of them starting to ship.
Absolutely. Mike, where can everybody find you online, and how do they get in touch with you if they need you?
Yeah, so give you our little commercial. So we're still under Blue Marsh Insurance for now. We're going to be launching a website called brewerinsured.com. That should be live hopefully in the next month. We've got a great program right now with the Brewers of PA, where if you're with Blue Marsh and with the Brewers of PA, we have a safety group where essentially you can earn 40% of your workers' compensation premium back in a dividend. So that's kind of what we just launched, man. We're excited to see, what happens. But, at the end of the day, if I can go back and give a brewer 40% of his annual premium back because they want to focus on being safe, it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on, and, on all these things here at Taps and Teas, what we try and do is bring people some education more than anything. We have, I keep promising every time I put one of these out here, it's just been an odd year. We have some much more fun stuff. We got a couple of golf things coming out in the next few days, and you'll see those. And we do have the fun ones coming. So everybody, I appreciate you listening. It's always amazing to see this little podcast keep growing. So I appreciate that. Mike, thanks for coming on, and look forward to talking down the road for sure and sharing a couple beers.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Marty, and I definitely look forward to getting together and having it.
This is the podcastfactory.com.